Bitcoin alone is 2 trillion, and let's say everything else adds up to 1 trillion, or plus or minus. Who would have thought 15 years ago that you could get to that scale without kind of formal blessing? To go from 3 trillion to 50 trillion over the next decade, like that's the kind of scale we're talking about. The entire market can easily 10x with this next major unlock from Congress.
All right, we're here with Kyle Samani, co-founder, managing partner at Multicoin. Kyle, good to see you, man.
Zach, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here on the floor of Accelerate because I think, the space has come so far. You guys, one of the largest investors in terms of Solana ecosystem projects. What's it like for you being here, seeing all this happen now?
I mean, it's awesome to be here, and especially in the US. The last 4 breakpoints were all outside the US, and the day after the election, Raj, Toli, Lily, and the team, they were like, we got to do something in the US ASAP, so they got this turnaround in 6 months, and seeing the energy and excitement, and obviously like seeing Kraken launch equity, US equities on chain yesterday with Solana, I was like, this is exactly what we wanted to see. Super cool to see all this innovation coming out in the US.
Yeah, and I mean, here you have the chair of the House Financial Services Committee talking about everything as well. Obviously, there is a big unlock, and how much of that right now is being captured by Solana ecosystem projects in your eyes?
I mean, if you look today at I think where the substantial majority of intellectual capital building in crypto today is in Solana ecosystem. There's probably 2 metrics I would use to kind of try and capture that. The first is Electric Capital. They publish a developer report every 6 months or so. And the last time they published it was a couple months ago. And Solana is now the leading ecosystem by number of developers. This was completely implausible 2 years ago. And today Solana is number 1 on that metric. The other one that I look at that I actually think is a better metric is to look at the crypto-specific incubators and looking at what percentage of their applications and accepted teams. Alliance, I kind of think, is generally considered the leading accelerator. And the Alliance guys said in their most recent batch that I think 70% of their applications and accepted founders are building on Solana.
Yeah.
Ultimately, those are going to be the next pump funds and all those things, and like they're all on Solana now.
Well, I feel like we're also getting into this chapter, and you can kind of feel it. Like we were just down with the Crypto Task Force chatting with Hester Peirce about real projects being able to deliver real value back to people. And for so long, it's been kind of like this, tokenomics here, tokenomics there. But we're getting into the era, I think, where there's a real ownership at play, and people building in the space aren't afraid of that anymore. We're talking about the Genius Act potentially coming through as well, so huge liquidity unlocks. I mean, when you look at that and a bunch of money about to come into stablecoins, how do you see that impacting kind of the size of the prize?
It's honestly amazing the crypto as a whole is as big as it is, given that at least in the United States, it's pseudo not legal. It's been in somewhere between black and gray for 15 years, and Bitcoin alone is 2 trillion, and let's say everything else adds up to 1 trillion, or plus or minus. Who would have thought 15 years ago that you could get to that scale without kind of formal blessing? To go from 3 trillion to 50 trillion over the next decade, that's the kind of scale we're talking about. The entire market can easily 10x with this next major unlock from Congress.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess related to that, are big traditional players now wanting to tap crypto native players? You mentioned Kraken as kind of one example. The other one, you're about to go have a chat with the co-founder of Kalshi here. Talk to me about what you're seeing there in terms of other existing players now looking small relative to what maybe a Kalshi is unlocking.
If you look at the opportunity for someone like a Kalshi, today they're a fintech business. They don't really have much crypto in there, fully regulated by the CFTC. And obviously, Kalshi guy is here because he's going to talk about some crypto stuff. Excited to talk with him here in a few minutes. But I can tell you in my conversations with Tarek that he believes that the future of finance is on chain. And look, he's building prediction markets not for the United States, but for the world. Obviously, he's regulated in the US, he's CFTC regulated, but ultimately the aspirations for a company like Kalshi are global. And people are going to predict and bet on event contracts and event outcomes in every single country around the world. And I think the only path for someone like Kalshi to get there is on something like Solana.
When we talk about Solana specifically, one of the things you and I were chatting about before we started was the ecosystem, the community, the kind of momentum that's been built now. Having lived through a pretty dark crypto winter, how do you stack that up against other ecosystems building? I know you have some spicy takes around Base and Coinbase's hand in that ecosystem and L2s, but there's also the counterparts like Sui that are starting to maybe take some projects from the Solana ecosystem too. How do you look at maybe the moat that Solana has?
Yeah, I mean, the moat of any asset ledger, whether it's an L1 or an L2, is some combination of number of developers, number of users, amount of liquidity, amount of trading volume, market makers plugged in, and very importantly, all the on and off ramps, meaning the exchanges and MoonPays and stuff like that. Today, Solana is the only first-class citizen in addition to Ethereum. There isn't another first-class citizen that has like global acceptance from all of the kind of major players around the world.
Yeah.
For a long time, if you were in crypto, it seemed impossible for anyone to get there because Ethereum was so dominant and it was so hard to get all those pieces together. The reality is that the Ethereum guys just totally missed the mark. They didn't scale, gas fees spiked through the roof, people got really pissed and they said, okay, like these guys don't care about my user experience, I'm gonna go elsewhere. And Solana was really the primary beneficiary of that. Today, median transaction fees on Solana are a tenth of a penny, even when you've got tens of thousands of TPS running through the system, even through Trump coin launch and stuff like that. And so the thing that I just wonder about for all of these new L1s and L2s is like, well, what's the reason for your system to achieve escape velocity and become something that is kind of a global first-class citizen beyond cheap and fast?
Yep.
And the SWE and a bunch of these other teams, they always say we're cheaper, faster, and I'm not here to say they are or aren't. I don't actually know, but it's just like, well, if median transaction fees on Solana are a tenth of a penny, it's just like you're getting really close to zero.
Sure.
And so it's just kind of like, but obviously $50 versus a tenth of a penny is like a pretty big improvement. Tenth of a penny to, it doesn't really move the needle anymore.
Sure.
And that's the kind of the thing that, that's the big question I have. And look, I've spoken to every L1 and L2 founder who has tried to build an L1 or L2 in the last decade.
Yeah.
And I've asked all of them, I'm like, what are your ideas besides cheap and fast?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not even just the cheap and fast at this point. Like, again, we launched our play button meme coin in Solana mostly because there's an ecosystem built around understanding these things and
Correct.
And the infrastructure for it to be there. And so it is kind of interesting to see. But you having so many kind of portcos building on Solana, and we love asking really smart people for their bold predictions. We're about halfway through the year here in 25. What do you see shaping up when you put all those pieces together? The unlocks that we just talked about, how high do you see kind of Solana's price going? How do you look at that when you kind of forecast everything?
Not here to make near-term price predictions. I can talk about, I think, ecosystem. I think what you will see by the end of this calendar year in the Solana ecosystem is the following. The system will be substantially more performant than it is today. Total throughput will go up, latency will go down. I think you will see permissioned and regulated asset issuers issuing the substantial majority of their assets on Solana. Yep. Today it's still mostly on Ethereum, but I think that's going to shift very quickly. I think Kraken's announcement yesterday is kind of the harbinger of a lot of that to come. I think you're going to see the major DePIN teams like Helium and HiveMapper are going to go have breakout years in the back half of this year. And I think you're going to see the market structure on Solana evolve to be much more efficient, meaning like all of these like bad sandwiches and bad sniping and all this stuff. It's always here because of the market structure was a little immature, and all of the solutions to those problems are like rolling out kind of now-ish. Yep. And I think by the end of this year, you'll have a much more efficient and safer and better market structure for retail investors.
Last question real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy is it to kind of think about the bear market, Solana being branded a Sam coin back when FTX collapsed, to be here and have everything blowing up?
It's an incredible feeling to be here, and I'm so grateful to the Solana community and the teams who have made it all happen. It was a really dark time, but look, a lot of these guys, like, they still believed, and they were like, look, like, just because like this other guy was a bad dude doesn't mean Solana's bad, and they stuck it out, and a bunch of them almost died, and we had to help a bunch of them stay alive, and they stuck it through, and now they're being rewarded for that conviction.
And now, again, the ecosystem, having lived through it, kind of some camaraderie around all of it. But Kyle Samani, Multicoin co-founder, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you being
pleasure.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.